When we speak of worthiness, we are not talking about the kind of value the world attaches to material possessions, fame, or fleeting applause. We are speaking of something deeper, something that cannot be taken away by circumstance, criticism, or even failure. The power of inner worthiness is the foundation of everything else you will ever achieve in life. Without it, no accomplishment can stand tall. With it, even the smallest act of kindness or courage shines brighter than the grandest display of wealth or status. Inner worth is the quiet assurance that you are living in alignment with your values, that your words are matched by your actions, and that you hold yourself accountable before anyone else ever does. It is about creating a strength of character so undeniable that the world will feel compelled to recognize it. This kind of worth is not inherited, nor is it bought. It is built day by day, choice by choice. Every time you choose honesty over convenience, discipline over laziness, humility over arrogance, you are carving out the foundation of your worth. Too often, people wait for the world to validate them, to announce that they are worthy. But true worthiness is not a certificate handed to you by others. It is the unshakable reality you live out every single day. When you carry yourself with authenticity, when you walk in the dignity of your truth, you do not need permission to be respected. You become respect itself. Think about it. The greatest people who ever walked this earth were not necessarily the strongest, the wealthiest, or even the most talented. What set them apart was the inner compass. They refused to compromise. They valued principles over popularity. They stood firm when it would have been easier to give in. They honored their word even when no one was watching. And because of this, their worth could not be questioned. Their legacy endured not because of what they had, but because of who they were. That is the kind of worthiness I invite each of you to pursue. And yet, building inner worth is not a glamorous journey. It is not a stage with bright lights and loud applause. It is often lonely, filled with moments where you must choose between what is right and what is easy. It is in the silence of self-reflection where you admit your weaknesses honestly and then do the hard work of overcoming them. It is in the discipline of small, daily actions, rising early when your body wants to sleep, practicing gratitude when your heart feels heavy, showing respect when no one returns it. These small acts may seem invisible to the world, but they are the very bricks that construct the foundation of a worthy life. Do not mistake inner worth for perfection. No one standing here, no one in the history of mankind has ever lived flawlessly. Worthiness is not about never falling. It is about the courage to rise every time you do. It is about taking responsibility for your mistakes, learning from them, and emerging stronger. The world does not need perfect people. It needs people of depth. People who can be trusted, people whose presence uplifts rather than diminishes. And that begins with you deciding in the quiet of your own heart that you will live in a way that honors your values regardless of who is watching. When you develop that kind of worth, the world will eventually notice. Opportunities will gravitate toward you, not because you chased them desperately, but because the strength of your character attracted them naturally. People will want to meet you, learn from you, and walk with you because you embody something rare, authenticity in a world full of masks. Your worth will not be a question, it will be a fact. And even in the face of rejection or criticism, that inner worth will shield you because you will know your value does not depend on the approval of others. The truth is, the world is always searching for people who are real. People whose lives remind us that greatness is not about standing above others, but about standing true to yourself. When you commit to being that kind of person, when you dedicate yourself to building inner worth through honesty, courage, and discipline, you will not have to force the world to meet you. The world will seek you out. So let us begin not with applause, not with titles, but with the quiet resolve to become so deeply rooted in worthiness that nothing can shake it. Because when your worth shines from within, the world will have no choice but to come and see. So often, people are told that their beginnings define their endings. They are told that because they were born in a small place or into a family without wealth or into circumstances that seem limiting, their future will always be bound by those same chains. But the truth is, your worth is never determined by where you start. It is defined by what you choose to become. Character is greater than circumstance. Your environment may shape you, but it does not have the authority to confine you unless you hand over that power. The stories of the world's most remarkable individuals prove this again and again. Many of them were not born into privilege. They did not come into the world with a stage waiting for them or a crown resting on their heads. They began as ordinary people, sometimes even in the shadows of struggle and poverty. But what they possessed was something their environment could not take away: the courage to rise above it, the strength to remain honest when it was tempting to compromise, and the determination to live by principles that stood taller than their challenges. That is why we remember them, not because of where they came from, but because of the character they chose to cultivate. When you look at your own life, you may find reasons to feel small. You may see limitations that whisper to you that you are not enough, that your birthplace, your background, or your struggles somehow disqualify you from greatness. But hear this clearly: what defines your life is not the size of the town you grew up in, or the status of your family, or the hardships you faced. What defines your life is the size of your heart, the honesty of your actions, and the resilience of your spirit. Character is the great equalizer. It can lift you from the most unlikely places and set you before the world as someone worth listening to. Think of how many people with privilege, power, and influence have wasted it because their character was hollow. They had all the circumstances in their favor, yet their lack of values brought them down. On the other hand, there are countless men and women who rose from obscurity with little more than faith, integrity, and perseverance, and changed the course of history. That is the power of character over circumstance. Where you come from may explain your roots, but it does not predict your reach. But let us be honest, living by character is not always easy. Circumstances test us. When you are surrounded by doubt, when resources are scarce, when it feels like no one believes in you, it takes extraordinary strength to keep walking the right path. Temptations will come urging you to compromise, to take shortcuts, to abandon your principles for quicker rewards. Yet it is in those very moments that character is forged. Integrity shines brightest in the darkness of difficulty. And when you stay true to your values despite the weight of your circumstances, you prove not just to the world, but to yourself that you are worthy of every opportunity that is yet to come. Let me remind you, the world is not moved by excuses. It is moved by examples. Excuses explain why we could not rise, but examples inspire others to believe they can. When you choose character over circumstance, you become that example, not just for yourself, but for every person who sees your life as a testimony that beginnings do not dictate endings. Imagine the impact of living that way. Imagine a young person looking at you and realizing that they too can rise, that their birthplace is not their destiny. That is how transformation spreads, one worthy life at a time. So do not underestimate the power of your choices. Do not look down on yourself because of where you started. Every act of honesty, every step of perseverance, every decision to stand firm when it would have been easier to bend, these are the building blocks of the legacy you will leave behind. Circumstances may set the stage, but character writes the script. And when you let your values guide your journey, the world will not remember you for the limits you faced, but for the strength you showed in overcoming them. Because in the end, it is never about where you come from. It is about who you choose to be. Words are powerful, but they are not enough on their own. The world is filled with speeches, promises, declarations, and dreams spoken out loud, but never acted upon. People say they want to change. They say they want to inspire. They say they want to make a difference. But inspiration is never born from words alone. It is born from action. It is the way you live, the way you show up, the way you stand when it would be easier to sit down. That speaks the loudest to the world. Actions echo louder than any speech you will ever give. Think about the people who inspire you the most. Chances are it is not only because of what they said. It is because they lived in a way that gave their words credibility. Their lives became proof of their beliefs. When they spoke about courage, you saw them act courageously. When they spoke about kindness, you saw them treat others with compassion. When they spoke about discipline, you saw it in the choices they made every single day. That is what makes inspiration real. It is not something you can fake, because the world always sees who you truly are. We live in a time where people crave authenticity more than anything else. They are tired of empty talk. They are tired of promises without follow-through. They are tired of leaders who preach one thing and live another. What the world longs for: examples, real, human examples, of people who practice what they preach, people who quietly but powerfully live out the very values they speak about. You may never stand on a stage, you may never have a crowd applauding your words, but the way you treat people, the way you carry yourself, the way you commit to excellence in the small things. These are the actions that inspire others far more than the most eloquent speech. Do not underestimate the power of the life you live. When you choose to act with integrity, even when no one is watching, it plants seeds in the hearts of those who do see. When you choose to show kindness to someone who can give you nothing in return, it ripples outward in ways you may never fully realize. When you decide to keep going, to keep working, to keep striving when the easier choice would be to quit, you send a silent but undeniable message it is possible to endure. Your life becomes the message. The truth is, action requires courage. Words can be safe. You can say what you believe without ever truly living it out. But when you take action, when you embody your values, you put yourself on the line. It is riskier. People may criticize you, they may misunderstand you, they may doubt your motives. Yet this is what separates dreamers from doers. Dreamers imagine what could be. Doers build it step by step with actions that prove their words. And it is the doers who inspire the world. Some of the greatest changes in history did not come from people shouting the loudest. They came from people whose lives could not be ignored. A simple act of resistance, a small display of compassion, a consistent dedication to justice. These actions moved hearts and shifted societies. You may think your own actions are too small to matter, but history shows us that it is often the smallest sparks that ignite the biggest fires. And so, never dismiss the quiet actions of integrity, of kindness, of service. They are the truest form of inspiration. And let us not forget that inspiration is not about perfection. No one is inspired by someone who appears flawless, untouchable, or distant. People are inspired by those who rise after falling, who admit their weaknesses but keep moving forward, who stumble but refuse to stay down. That honesty in action creates connection. It tells others, if I can keep going, so can you. That is why your actions matter even more when they come through struggle, because they show the strength of perseverance. So if you want to inspire the world, do not begin by asking, what should I say? Begin by asking, how should I live? Because inspiration does not flow from a microphone. It flows from the daily choices of a life lived with purpose. Be the person who forgives when anger would be easier. Be the person who shows up when others walk away. Be the person who gives more than they take. These are the actions that transform not just your own life, but the lives of everyone who witnesses them. And when your actions speak louder than your words, when your life becomes the evidence of your values, you will not need to demand attention. The world will see and the world will follow. Because the most powerful way to inspire is not to talk about change, but to become the change. Life has a way of testing us in moments we least expect. Just when we think the path is clear, a challenge appears. Just when we start to feel comfortable, a storm rolls in. These challenges are not accidents, nor are they punishments. They are invitations. Invitations to grow, to strengthen, to discover parts of ourselves we may never have known existed. Every struggle carries within it an opportunity, but it takes courage to see it that way. For many, difficulties feel like barriers. But to those who choose resilience, those same difficulties become stepping stones towards something greater. Think about the times you have faced your hardest battles. In the middle of them, it may have felt like the end of the road. It may have seemed impossible to move forward, impossible to keep believing, impossible to keep going. And yet here you are. You survived every challenge that once threatened to break you, and in surviving, you became stronger. The strength you carry today is not born from easy days. It is born from days when you felt weak but kept going anyway. It is born from nights when you wanted to give up but chose to rise again in the morning. That is the quiet power of resilience. It transforms pain into preparation. We often look at strong people and admire them as though they were simply born that way. But no one is born with resilience fully formed. Strength is built in the fire of difficulty. Patience is built in seasons of waiting. Courage is built in moments of fear. And wisdom is built through mistakes that teach us lessons words never could. So instead of wishing away challenges, learn to see them as the training grounds of your character. Every obstacle that stands before you today is shaping you for something greater tomorrow. But I will not pretend it is easy. Challenges hurt. They test your limits. They shake your faith. Sometimes they bring you to your knees. And in those moments, it is tempting to believe that your struggle is proof of your weakness. But the truth is the opposite. Struggle is the birthplace of strength. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Gold is refined by fire. And human beings are shaped into their truest, strongest selves through the very struggles that once felt unbearable. When you shift your perspective in this way, challenges no longer become reasons to despair, but reasons to rise. Instead of asking, why me? You begin to ask, what is this teaching me? How is this shaping me? What strength is being born in me through this? And the moment you begin to ask those questions, you reclaim your power. The struggle no longer controls you. You begin to use it. And here is something powerful to remember. The challenges you face are not just about you. When you endure hardship and emerge stronger, your resilience becomes a source of hope for others. People who feel like giving up will look at you and realize they can keep going too. Your strength gives them strength. Your perseverance gives them courage. Your victory over hardship whispers to others, if they could rise, so can I. That is how personal struggle becomes collective inspiration. It is also important to know that transforming challenges into strength does not mean pretending you are unshaken. It does not mean wearing a mask of invincibility. Real strength is not about denying pain. It is about walking through it with honesty and still choosing not to quit. It is about admitting when the journey feels heavy, but deciding to carry it anyway. It is about knowing that even if you stumble, even if you fall, you will not stay down. That authenticity is what makes your resilience meaningful and relatable. Remember, the storms of life are temporary, but the strength they leave within you is permanent. Every time you overcome, you add another layer of resilience to your spirit. And when the next challenge comes, and you will face it with greater wisdom, deeper patience, and stronger faith than before. Life does not get easier, but you get stronger, and that strength, once earned, cannot be taken away. So when the storms come, and they surely will, do not curse them. Welcome them as teachers, as builders, as unseen allies preparing you for the next chapter of your journey. For it is not the easy days that define you, but the hard ones. And when you choose to rise in the face of struggle, you are not just surviving, you are transforming. Because every challenge that once tried to break you has the power, if you let it, to make you unshakable. One of the greatest measures of worth is not how high you can climb alone, but how many people you lift as you rise. The world has never been transformed by selfish ambition. It has been changed by people who understood that true greatness is not measured in personal gain, but in the impact they leave on others. To be worthy of the world's attention, you must be willing to create connections, to share your strength, and to use your influence not just to advance yourself, but to open doors for those who walk behind you. It is easy to focus only on our own journey. After all, life gives each of us struggles, responsibilities, and dreams to pursue. But if all we ever do is chase success for ourselves, then even at the height of our achievements, we may find our lives feel empty. There is a deeper fulfillment that comes only when we realize that what we build is meant to be shared. When your success becomes a source of hope for others, when your journey lights the way for someone else, then your worth begins to multiply beyond measure. Think of the people who left lasting marks on history or even in your own life. They were not necessarily the wealthiest nor the most powerful by worldly standards. They were the ones who chose to give, to teach, to encourage, to stand beside others in their struggles. Their worth was amplified because they did not hoard it, they shared it. And in sharing it, they created legacies that stretched far beyond their own lifetimes. That is the power of building connections and impact. It is the decision to see others not as competitors, but as companions on the journey. The truth is, none of us reach our fullest potential in isolation. Every person who has achieved something meaningful has done so with the help, guidance, or inspiration of others along the way. When you acknowledge this, it changes how you view your own role in the world. You begin to ask, how can I give back what was once given to me? How can I make the path smoother for someone else? How can my story inspire someone who feels like giving up? When you start to live with those questions, you shift from chasing success to creating significance. But building connections is not just about grand gestures. It often begins with the smallest acts of kindness and presence. Listening to someone who feels unheard, offering encouragement when you see someone struggling, sharing knowledge that might help someone take the next step in their journey. These moments may feel small to you, but to someone else, they may mean the world. And when you consistently show up for people in these ways, you weave a network of trust, respect, and inspiration that expands far beyond your immediate reach. Impact is not about the size of your platform. It is about the depth of your contribution. A single kind act can ripple outward in ways you may never see. A word of encouragement can ignite the confidence someone needs to pursue their dream. A door you open for one person can lead them to open doors for many others. The impact of your worthiness is measured not in how loudly the world applauds you, but in how deeply others are changed because they encountered you. And let us be honest, giving of yourself is not always easy. It requires patience, humility, and often sacrifice. But it is in those sacrifices that the true measure of your character shines. Anyone can take for themselves. It takes courage to give for the benefit of others. Yet the reward of such giving is profound, because in lifting others, you find yourself lifted. In serving others, you discover purpose. And in creating opportunities for others, you leave behind something far greater than personal achievement. You leave behind a legacy of impact. Imagine a world where more people chose to live this way, where worth was not defined by wealth or fame, but by the connections built and the lives uplifted. Imagine communities bound together not by competition, but by compassion. That vision is not beyond our reach. It begins with each of us choosing every day to make our worth shine through the way we treat others. So let your worth be measured not just in what you achieve, but in what you give, not just in how far you go, but in how many you take with you. Because in the end, the true greatness of your life will not be found in standing above others, but in standing beside them. Every one of us is writing a story with our lives, and whether we realize it or not, that story will outlive us. The question is not whether we will leave something behind. The question is what we will leave. Will it be a story of selfish pursuit and forgotten ambition? Or will it be a story of impact, kindness, and worth? To be truly worthy in this world is to think beyond today, beyond applause, beyond recognition. It is to live with the awareness that your actions are shaping a legacy that others will remember long after your voice is silent. Legacy is not built in one great moment, but in countless small ones. It is formed in the decisions you make when no one is watching, in the way you treat people when there is nothing to gain, in the consistency with which you choose to live your values. Over time, these small choices add up to a reputation, and that reputation becomes the foundation of the legacy you leave behind. People may forget what you said, they may even forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel and the example you set with your life. So many people chase after recognition, as if the applause of the world is the highest prize. But applause fades. The same crowd that cheers today may forget tomorrow. What endures is the mark you leave on the lives you touched. A word of encouragement that gave someone hope. An act of generosity that changed the course of another's journey. A life of integrity that inspired others to live with greater courage. These are the things that cannot be erased, because they are written not in headlines but in hearts. The beauty of legacy is that it is not reserved for a select few. You do not need wealth or status or fame to leave behind something worthy. Every person has the power to create a legacy of worth simply by living with purpose and compassion. The parent who teaches their child values, the teacher who believes in a student when no one else does, the friend who stands by someone in their darkest hour. All of these lives are leaving legacies just as significant as the leaders whose names fill history books. Legacy is not about size, it is about sincerity. But building a legacy does require intention. You cannot drift through life and expect to leave behind something meaningful. You must decide now how you want to be remembered. Do you want to be remembered as someone who only looked out for themselves, or as someone who gave freely of their gifts? Do you want to be remembered as someone who compromised their values when tested, or as someone who stood firm even when it cost them something? These are the questions worth asking, because the answers will determine the story people tell about you long after you are gone. And let us not forget, legacy is not only about the future, it shapes the present as well. When you live with the awareness of the mark you want to leave, it changes how you live today. It guides your decisions, it sharpens your focus, it inspires you to rise above pettiness and distraction. It reminds you that every moment is an opportunity to build something lasting, something worthy. Even when no one acknowledges it now, you are laying bricks for a structure that will stand long after your time. There is also a freedom in knowing that legacy is not about perfection. None of us will live flawlessly. We will make mistakes, we will stumble, we will fall short of our own standards at times. But legacy is not destroyed by failure. It is defined by how you respond to it. Owning your mistakes, learning from them, and choosing to grow. These are the things that make your story authentic, relatable, and powerful. People are not inspired by an illusion of perfection. They are inspired by a life that perseveres with honesty and courage. So let your worth not be measured by how much you gained, but by how much you gave. Let it not be written in the titles you held, but in the lives you touched. Let it not be remembered only in words, but in the impact that continues long after you are gone. Because in the end, true worth is not about being known by the world. It is about being remembered for the good you left within it.